Well, Bitcoin, maybe, what was it? Less than a year ago was at 120,000. Bitcoin's down to 60,000. Dropped to 80 the other day. Now it's just over 60. So a lot of people have seen their Bitcoin position cut in half. Silver's down 38% recently. Now, silver and gold had gone way up for some reasons explainable, some reasons not, primarily related to the idea that the U.S. currency was going to get weaker, so it was best to move your money into other things like Bitcoin and silver and gold. Now, silver and gold obviously have a long history of being used as stores of value, so I don't think we're going to, and they have industrial uses. So silver and gold are not going to fall off the map. They could go down substantially. Surprisingly, Trump's new Fed chairman is someone that's probably going to make moves to re-strengthen the U.S. dollar. Traditionally, we don't really never do we let the U.S. dollar get super weak. That's one reason we have a trade deficit. The stronger our money is, the more expensive our goods are in another country. It has been sliding, and some people wanted the BRICS countries but BRICS countries is Brazil, Russia, India. What's the C? What the hell is the C? Well, whatever the C is, and South Africa. Now, the idea that a basket of currency from 5 unrelated countries is going to somehow replace the U.S. dollar, that doesn't even make, as the world's reserve currency, doesn't make any sense. Just doesn't make any economic sense. The same way that Bitcoin doesn't make any real economic sense. Ultimately, if you're playing investor, it's easy to get caught up in the gambling has so much taken over American culture. People are gambling on their phones. Michigan leads the country in rate of people gambling on their phones. Sports has kind of been ruined to me. I mean, not that I was the biggest sports fan, but all the gambling, gambling's being advertised during the games. They're paying college players. So I think this gambling mentality is definitely seeped into investing. Investing is not really for making something out of nothing. It's not for doubling your money. Anyone telling you that, it's not. Investing is for when you have some money, like you have a job and you save a little bit of money and you put it in something that grows hopefully 7, 8, 9, 10% over a long period of time with ups and downs, and you retire on it. Investing in some company that makes made Coca-Cola, Tesla, Ford, some of those may go up, some may go down, right? So say you have a bunch of car companies you've invested in. Some are going to go up, maybe the Tesla and BYD, and some are going to go down. But it should average out and you should get a little gain. Coca-Cola's not going nowhere. Then you have your dividend stocks that pay you, in addition to them getting slightly more value every year, they kick out a couple percent dividend. Or you can buy bonds. Traditionally, the older you are, if you're an older person, you should be 60, 40, 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. Crypto recently, Bitcoin specifically, was allowed by the SEC for there to be ETFs of them, total funds. But where basically you didn't have to buy Bitcoin, you can buy a share of a pool of Bitcoin, and then they're responsible for protecting it and etc. But this massive drop reminds me of when I got out of Bitcoin, but I got out of it ahead of time. Years ago, it got up to, I was buying it when I may have bought some when it was under 1,000. I definitely was buying it in the 2,000s, the 4,000s, the 1,000s. And I was selling it because to me it just seemed like kind of nonsense. I remember when there was a Bitcoin fork, where they created something called Bitcoin Cash. Because I owned 10 Bitcoin at the time, I was given 10 Bitcoin Cash. They were each worth $3,200 at the time. So I was given something that was supposedly had a value of $32,000 for no reason. And I thought, they're inventing money values. This can't be real. I sold my Bitcoin Cash immediately. It still exists, I think. It trades for very, very little. It collapsed, within a month or two or 4 after me selling off of it. And as Bitcoin got up to 19,000, I got rid of my last ones. And if you remember, in the maybe January, February of 2019 or 18, it went to 2,000. And I thought it was over with. It was built through, I feel, marketing hype. I think that there's a cabal. There's people behind it. Not people behind it, but the whales act in concert to move the price. There's been a lot of people inserting so-called news into the news cycle about, regular people should buy Bitcoin and it's the future, and all these tech people that have a lot of money. Not all of them, many of them will extol Bitcoin, but I think it's like a trick, because Bitcoin, again, it doesn't solve any problem. Blockchain, the technology it's on, is being used in many industries, but you don't have to. It's the technology of blockchain is not. It's just Bitcoin is just one implementation of it. You don't need. They're not the same thing. You can use blockchain for record keeping and records exchange and etc. And logistical tracking without it being Bitcoin. Now, still to this day, the only time I see Bitcoin referenced, it's in some crime. They had big Canadian drug dealer they just captured. In the indictment, they had him, one of his Bitcoin wallets received $350 million in coke money. There was just the other day a guy using the code name John Lick on Telegram. His name is John DeGina. Or that's his father's name. But anyways, he's on Telegram beefing with some other young guy about, how much money I got. And he shows this Bitcoin wallet with 23 million, and he moves money in and out of it. Now, you have this group called ZachXBT that watches hackers and turns them in. So they figured out who this guy was and turned him in. This guy was the son of a guy who has a contract from the U.S. government to store Bitcoin that's seized in criminal activities. So this guy's father had a company storing 30 billion in Bitcoin. He somehow, you live in a house with your father. He somehow, got in his dad's computer or whatever the hell and pulled out, at least 23 million in that instance. And he may have done more. So, Bitcoin, again, when I see people using it, it's child P, drug deals, drug dealers using it to move money around. We already have ways to move money around that have insurance on them. If I buy a $10,000 item on my Visa card, there's a 2.9% fee. But first of all, I get a little bit of that in points. Visa gives me different services. And most importantly, if my product I got from you is bunk, and I'm a good Visa customer, which I probably am if I'm able to have a $10,000 card, and and I'm not someone who's constantly making fraud claims, I can call and say, they sent me something, I bought it for $10,000, it's broken, it don't work, they're refusing to refund me, and they'll just credit your money back because the other person's a Visa vendor, and if they refuse to take the money back, they'll lose their ability to process Visa. Always good to buy stuff on your credit cards. Your Visa and your bank that issues the credit card is your friend, as long as you're not making, which some people do, constant, I don't know about these charges, even though you're the one who ordered it. But if you occasionally make a call and say, I don't know nothing about this, they'll wipe it off. Usually no questions asked. At best, you might have to talk. They might make you talk to a few people just to get a feel for if you're lying. But the few times I've had to do that, never had a problem. They just wipe it off. Bitcoin, there is no, I had Bitcoin, I had Ethereum stolen from me through an elaborate, I don't know who did it, through some, they got my phone taken off the network so that they could change my email password and go on my email. And just by weird coincidence, I had sent my father my passwords, which I should have never done, and they were able to get it. And then when I had that sinking, if your house gets broken into, your car gets stolen, you file a police report, you should have insurance, you're going to get at least a nice chunk back. When I was like, damn, you can get this stuff stolen and there's no one to even call. That's not how the modern economy works. Credit and insurance is really, credit and insurance are the two things on the financial side. They really took us from a from the pre-industrial revolution to this world we live in, where we can buy big things like cars and educations. And, I want to go take my wife on a nice $5,000 vacation. I don't have $5,000. Put it on the credit card, and we're going to pay $500 a month. Well, plus interest, $550 a month back for the next 10 months because we can afford that. But in the meantime, we've had our $5,000 vacation. Bitcoin just does not seem to have, like a lot of these new tech products they're forcing on us, or try to NFTs. So Bitcoin has crashed to 60. If I was you and I had some Bitcoin, I think some major banks have just issued their Bitcoin prediction prices zero. I've always said Bitcoin's long-term price will asymptotically approach zero. That's your word for the day, asymptotically. It means to approach but never get to. It's a mathematical term usually used in calculus, meaning you approach a certain number and you never quite get to it. Like there's a lot of functions in calculus where it'll decline like that, and it's going towards zero, but it's getting infinitely closer and closer to zero without giving you zero. People have Bitcoin. There'll be a certain amount of people that refuse to give up the ghost and hold it, but this idea that it's going to replace money, it just doesn't make any sense. I know you've been taught the word fiat. Oh, the U.S. dollar, just fiat money. Well, the U.S. dollar is backed by the full faith of the U.S. government. Now, the U.S. government puts people like some of you and me in handcuffs and in jail. The U.S. government has nuclear weapons. The U.S. government builds roads. The U.S. government, makes there be street lights and all sorts of things. So the U.S. government has a lot of power. And if a day ever comes when the U.S. government's full faith in the dollar doesn't mean anything, it probably means society has collapsed in general, and I don't think your Bitcoin's going to be worth anything either. What you're going to want to have is bullets, canned goods, batteries, penicillin, aspirin, maybe some type of opioid for pain killing, maybe some like Neosporin type stuff. Lots of sealed food, lots of sealed water, maybe some type of contraption where you can take dirty water and make it clean. I guess those exist, but you're going to need a lot of batteries. You need energy for that. Guns and books so you can learn how to garden grow your own food. But that's another big story. But so yeah, that's the big financial story for the day. Bitcoin down to 60. This we may be seeing the beginning of the AI apocalypse of the financial system, because so there's two ideas. There's that like half the value now, because Nvidia and Facebook and Apple companies, Oracle companies that either are AI companies, are spending a lot to implement AI, or have contracts with these AI people, or are expecting to become AI companies. The math ain't math, and all these data centers, they've canceled these data centers being built. When you're on your phone and you generate one of your little funny memes with the AI, a lot of calculations have to happen. A lot of energy gets used. So these data centers all they are is racks of, for my fellow video game player, well, I need NVIDIA GPUs for my video editing, but the same graphic cards that go on your computer for your games, they have rows and rows of tens of thousands of them hooked together, and that's what's doing the AI calculations. But it just requires so much. How fast can this stuff really grow, even if it's working? Not as fast as the valuations. Did you know that 1% of the whole U.S. or 2%, 1 or 2% of the whole U.S. economy last year was the construction of data centers? Think about all the things that go on in America and the U.S. economy, all the restaurants, all the sports stadiums, all the cars, all the people paying rent, all the hospitals, all the medical bills. 1 out of $50 was just for AI data centers. And for those of you that have used AI to do stuff, it does some cool stuff. It does some janky stuff. There's certain things I use it for every day, but they're small. I mean, use it to clean up the audio on my video stuff. It can, but that don't justify 2% of the economy. So be careful right now. Half of all the value in the U.S. stock market is in like 10 companies, because the bigger the company, it's weighted. The S&P 500, you could lose a lot of money if you're sitting in Nvidia but there's a second. This is where it gets complicated. There's a second thing. Something just happened with Claude where, well, they knew this was going to happen. As if AI is working right, what would it be doing in the business world? Forget all this generating photos and videos. Instead of using Microsoft Excel, you just tell with the prompt, hey, I need a spreadsheet that does this, and this, and here's all the data. And the AI will just make a spreadsheet for you. You don't need the intermediate. You don't need Excel. In fact, if AI really works and takes over, you really won't have apps, because the AI will just do anything you need. It'll write the code right then. You wouldn't need to have any app, actually, or very few. You would just make apps as you're needed. So if companies like Microsoft can't sell software, well, you're going to see a lot of bloodbath in the stock market. So changes are happening. Changes are coming. Another thing, if quantum computing stuff is happening, one of the first things it would be able to do would be to crack the encryption of Bitcoin. So it wouldn't even be safe. So as I watch Bitcoin go from 2,000 up to 120,000, my father would be like, oh yeah, 10 of them you could have. And I just thought, yeah, well, maybe, but it just depends when you sell them, because I think it's going to go back down. So it's in a free fall. It went down to 80. It went down to 70 yesterday. It went down to 60 right now. In a bad free fall. If you have some, I know it's tempting to hold on. I knew a guy back when it went from 19 to 2. He at one point, he had all his coins together were worth $600,000. I was like, yo, man, it's at a top. Start selling, at least sell a nice chunk of it. And he held on and it dropped. And he's like, oh, fuck. I'm like, it's going to go back up, man. It's dropping, sell. And then it got all the way down to what had been worth $60,000 was worth $40,000. And he's like, this is where he got into this is what happens with people with gambling. You get into irrational beliefs. I just need it to go back up to $60,000, and then I can at least cash it all in and pay off all my student loan, and at least I can say I got something out of it. But your need to pay your student loan off debt doesn't guide the market, obviously. And it fell even more. He became, I had to have a long talk with him where he wasn't standing on a ledge about to throw himself off, but he was close. I had to really talk to him, and then he had some other experiences, bad experiences with money. But listen, people that have Bitcoin's price has gone way up because institutional investors, people with a lot of money, have been told, oh, well, put 2 or 3% of your money in Bitcoin. Put 1% in just because. Okay, I'll put a couple percent in. I'll put 5% in. But when you have a lot of money, so most of the money in the world is held by a small amount of people. Me or you might be, I want to turn my 40,000 into 80,000. But that's not where most of the money is. Most of the people, like if you have $10 million, you're much more concerned about not going back to 4 million than you are to going up to 16, because you got 10, like you're set for life. 16 ain't really going to change anything. 4, now you're in a different situation. So people are getting out. Once those type of people get out, I don't know if they're necessarily going to get back in. I think the emperor has no clothes with Bitcoin. We're finally seeing it. If you have money in markets, I might start pulling it out. I haven't had any money. I was assuming this was going to happen earlier. But there you go. There's my advice. Profit, Bitcoin dropping, asymptotically approaching zero, American dope.